Now for our roundtable with News Channel 5 political analyst Brian Crowley. Brian, thank you. As you always do so well, give us the 100,000-foot view here. Thrice indicted president, one of those indictments, of course, Fort Pierce, the other D.C., another New York case. Where are we?
Well, we're at a very unique time in our history, as I've said many times over the last week. One can only wonder where we're going to wind up with this. We had an interesting development on Friday with Governor Ron DeSantis, who has up until now said very little about whether or not he believed the election was stolen. We may be seeing a significant shift in his campaign because on Friday he said that the Trump election theories, stolen election theories, are false. That's a big step away.
In Donald Trump's mind, crossing a huge line with that statement.
Exactly, and for someone who, it suggests that Ron DeSantis understands that there's a hardcore of MAGA voters that he can't get. And that maybe, and we'll see in the days we come how much which direction he moves in, but that maybe he can peel off just enough of the less than hardcore MAGA voters to help him win the nomination. But it was an interesting step that he took on Friday, shortly after the indictment.
More moderate Republicans or more center-left Republicans, relatively speaking, within the party? I mean, that's what you're driving at? Well, at least the potential hope, because that is a big statement, given the fact that we can expect in pretty short order what the pushback will be from Donald Trump's troops.
Governor DeSantis still is somewhat of a mixed message on things. You know, he was in New Hampshire, which is, they're not as hardcore conservative as the rest of the country. I've spent a lot of time in New Hampshire.
Still have your snow prints all over the place.
Still have my snow prints up there. I try to go up almost every year. I've covered the primaries up there. They're a little more moderate, the Republicans up there. And, you know, he's been saying things like, you know, when he takes office, he's going to slit their throats, talking about the bureaucracy and various individuals. You know, he talks about, you know, flying over the target and other, you know, really strong statements like that. And even some of the folks in New Hampshire, in a story I read on Friday, were like, slit their throats? That's not the kind of language they necessarily want to hear. And certainly in a presidential campaign, it's rather unusual language. So, you know, I'm not exactly sure who he's messaging with that, who in the Republican Party he thinks he's attracting with that kind of language, which, you know, there may be some parents out there that are a little surprised that a father of 3 small children would be using that kind of language. And we'll see, but his campaign is very complicated right now because, as far as we know, as of today, Donald Trump is still beloved by the MAGA crowd, which is likely to be the crowd that gives him the nomination.
And you say likely, we know things can change, but the farther we move along, the further we move along, excuse me, thrice indicted, but with each indictment, his poll numbers seem to solidify and rise. Can Ron DeSantis ultimately, in your mind, I'm not asking for a crystal ball, but you've covered this a lot, can Ron DeSantis, much less any of the other challengers who are even much further behind, really make headway? Because the only way you can do that's with separation, but if you separate too much, you risk angering the very people, at least within the core of the Trump supporters, that you're trying to get.
I think Ron DeSantis has 2 problems within his campaign. One is he tends to surround himself with people who just agree with him. And that's not necessarily a good thing for anybody who's a leader, but if you're trying to run a campaign, you need somebody to say, no, that's not the direction to go in, we need to do this. And also, the people around him are not, in my view, really experienced national campaign people. And, you know, his #1 advisor, he's not shy of saying, is his wife. That's great, except she has 0 experience running a national campaign. And some of the other folks around him tend to just not have those deep layers of experience that you need to run a national campaign. National campaigns are very complicated. Iowa's not the same as New Hampshire. New Hampshire's not the same as South Carolina. South Carolina's not the same as Nevada. Boom. So
and you have to have the dexterity to know.
You have to have the dexterity to move. You have to understand the audience in each state. And he seems to be all over the place lately.
Let's talk about former President Donald Trump. If it was 25 years ago, whatever one thinks, pro or con, and goodness, we're polarized along many lines here, but whatever one might think, if it was 20 or 25 years ago, same kind of charges, your campaign sunk, whether you're a Republican or Democrat. What is it about the Donald Trump mystique and about the times we live in and about the deep-seated latent feelings in this country among his supporters, among others, that elevates the campaign? At root, we talk a lot about the support, but at root, it's driven by something. Talk about that something as you see it evolving.
I think it's complicated, and I think there was somebody who used an example not long ago that they weren't talking about MAGA specifically, but they were talking about people that seem left out of things. You never see a plumber in a movie or a TV show who isn't a buffoon. You never see a carpenter. You never, there's this tendency that if you're showing the South, it tends to be a bunch of goofy people with really heavy accents. And this person suggests that over the decades of doing that, you've hurt yourself with those kinds of people who think that all you care about are, college-educated New Yorkers, college-educated people in California, Chicago.
The coastal elites, as they're often
right, and I think they've seen enough changes in society that make them uncomfortable. That they want somebody who they think is going to push back. And the funny thing about that is, if there was anybody that was a member of the elite in his life, it was Donald Trump, the New Yorker, who used to mingle with the Clintons.
But he has found that formula
to
embody that sense of displacement and that sense of frustration with Washington.
Absolutely.
And everything else. And it's real.
We've never had a better political salesman in this country.
Final thought, and then we'll have your closing comments, of course, on the other side. Quick final thought on this side.
Well, I think that the other thing that we need to keep an eye on as we move forward is Mike Pence, who has now come out very vocally against Donald Trump, may wind up appearing in the trials. What impact is that going to have on his campaign, and where will Ron DeSantis be in dealing with that situation?
And others. Chris Christie's been trying to make a lot of hay by being very critical. We'll see how that works out as upcoming debates, whether the former president takes part in
Be ready for more surprises.
Oh, yes, indeed. Brian, we'll be back with your closing thoughts in just a moment.